Hi, hope that's not too bright. I'm trying to be productive today, just working through some paperwork, and simultaneously I'm watching the film In Time. This isn't going to be a film review, but I'll just mention it briefly. In Time, no copyright infringement intended, stars Justin Timberlake and Amanda Seyfried. It's a good dystopian film, and that wouldn't be my go-to choice of film genre, but I do like this one, and I think it was underrated. Check it out. In Time, 2013. It's basically about the concept of time itself is the currency of life, and that in a way relates to this video actually. So perhaps it's not unrelated. Um, I won't go into the whole plot of the film. It's a good movie. Check it out. Underrated in my opinion. But what I want to actually talk about is ambition and barriers in life. This is a very important subject. Before I do that, I just want to sort of say a quick thank you to three of my subscribers who commented on my last video, or not my last video, but the video entitled "Why So Many Left-Wing Millennials." Now, I got responses from Thomas Robson, Mark McCartney, and Sarah S. So I'd just like to thank you three for responding. Anyone else, welcome to respond. Um, and I was just kind of broadly asking the question why so many people of the millennial generation seem to be connected to the political left. I don't think it's the whole picture. For example, I have a young American friend. She's 22. Um, I haven't talked at length about what her politic is, but I know that her mother is a Trump supporter and very much to the right. And very occasionally, I see that come through in her views on issues like guns, which I wouldn't entirely agree with. But yeah, so I certainly don't want to give the impression that I would think that my whole generation is one way or the other. Obviously, I know that's not the case, but I do think there is sort of a silent centrist majority. I think sometimes we get the perception that because the woke brigade, for example, are very outspoken and they're very much in favor of, cancelling people and getting people sacked and all the rest of it. And perhaps the right wing equivalent is also pretty vocal. Naturally, those who are more vocal are going to get more attention, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are representative of the whole demographic. So, I want to talk about some things that I've just observed, and I think anyone will have observed this who has had any sort of challenges in life. And it's this: it's something that often is not really mentioned. Very often we see these inspirational videos online, often connected to sports, but not always. Sometimes inspirational leaders. They could be business-related videos, but like I say, they're often connected to sports motivation, boxers, Olympic runners, you name it. Um, and I've always felt that it makes sense that human beings, we are social creatures, right? Most of us are anyway, on some level. So it makes sense that when we look at someone being successful in any field, we're going to be inspired by that. That's why I am okay with the idea of people being admired. Where I draw a line is in idol worship to the point of marbleizing someone beyond all reason and all scrutiny. And there are certain figures who are kind of put into a position where it's almost a personality cult, which is to say that, they have very, very devout followers. And if you dare criticize them, you're a charlatan and you're going to be absolutely denounced and shamed and silenced. And there's a few examples of this. But what I want to look at is the reality that in life, no matter what we want to do, there's certain ethos that is out there like, okay, work hard and you can get everything. I don't think that is entirely accurate to the world in which we live. Why? Because we see people who work long, long hours in factories in developing countries in Bangladesh and the Philippines, just as two examples. They work long hours um, they're not exactly seeing the fruits of their labor. So I think it's too simplistic to say, oh, just work hard and you'll get anything you want. I understand the principle of it. Obviously, the person who is getting out there and trying to make the connections to do what they need to do and whatever their endeavor is going to be more effective than someone who's just watching YouTube videos all day, right? That makes sense. Obviously, the lockdown and coronavirus has slowed the whole world down. It might actually be advantageous, giving us all a bit of time in a sense, in some ways. But here's the thing, those inspirational videos and those sort of simplistic mantras of "Oh, just work hard and you'll get anything you want." Um, they're all very well and they have their place, but there is a very, very important thing that we need to be aware of. And I think this is very understated. And put simply, it is other people. You can be the hardest working person in the world. You can be the cleverest person in the world. You can be the bravest person in the world. But whatever you do as an endeavor is somehow going to involve other people. I think actually Gandhi said, we all shape the contours of each other's lives, which I don't know if that is attributed to Gandhi or not. I know it's been connected with him. Sometimes things are misplaced, but regardless, whoever said it, if it was Gandhi or someone else, that's an interesting thought. It's very poetic and it's something to think about. But here's the thing, right? You take any endeavor. You're a politician, right? Well, you rely on public votes. You rely on how well you manage to garner your policies and your appeal as a leader, even at localized level, to the voting public, particularly at national level, particularly for party leaders and cabinet members, thinking of the UK context. Um, So, someone who's an ambitious politician knows full well there's several things that is absolutely mandatory. They need to have tough skin because they're going to be, even politicians who enjoy a honeymoon period, at some point, there's going to be some controversy or some policy that people dislike or some scandal that the media is going to get hold of. So, in that case, for politicians, they are public figures. Who matters? The public, the voting public. If a politician's despised, they're not going to get voted for. There may not be many politicians that are very personally popular, but at least they have a level of, if not popularity, at least support whereby they will get re-elected. Um, so this is something that politicians have to be constantly aware of. They need to get out there. They need to canvass. They need to have the courage to stand by their policies, even if they might be unpopular. Um, so there is a huge number of things that a capable politician requires. A huge number of things, and I'm just scratching the surface. Then journalists. To be a successful journalist, even if you're a freelancer, you still need to rely on editors. You still need to rely on publications that will take your assignment. That's other people. Sports. You know, um, you can be a great fighter. You could be physically tough. You could be fast. You could be skilled. You can have ring intelligence. But you have to rely on your trainer and maybe the procedure, particularly starting off. For example, you may need to go to the gym and you need to work that around. I mean, people forget the little things in life. We talk about these big grand things, but there's little practical things. A lot of boxing gyms, for example, their training sessions tend to be around 5 o'clock. So then you need to work out, well, when am I getting dinner? How do I get there? Do I walk there? Do I get the bus? What if one trainer tells me one thing and another trainer tells me another thing? I find boxing clubs in particular do have a tendency to give mixed messages in that regard, which could be a bit off-putting. But all these great fighters, they all started somewhere, and they all it sounds like a cliche, but from that first day they went into a gym, they would have had to, work with their trainer or their promoter later on. So that's other people involved. Even a writer, which is generally seen as quite a kind of private ambition, a somewhat private enterprise, you still need to rely on your publisher. You still need to have that liaison and that connection with your publisher, or even a literary agent. Many publishers today won't touch a manuscript work that hasn't been solicited by an agent. Actors, they rely on their agents. So I don't know if there is any endeavor in this world that doesn't, on some level, rely on other people. Okay, you might have reclusive people like mountain men, who go off into the wilderness and just they want a life away from human society, and that's fine for them. Um, then, if they integrate into human society again, they would need ostensibly someone to tell their story. They could do it themselves, but they would still need a filmmaker or a documentarian or something like that to cover that. What I'm really driving at is I'm business. It goes without saying, business people constantly need to be maneuvering as to how they make their pitch, as to how they make a good business deal, as to how they recover from a bad business deal, as to how they deal with disappointment. So I do think that reality and understanding this is so, so very important in life. Artists, I mean, I could go on. An artist, they need to get their work exhibited at a gallery or at least some sort of attention. I was watching a documentary about Jean-Michel Basquiat last night. He started off as a graffiti artist on the streets of New York City. He ended up right into the social scene of Manhattan. Of course, he died young from a heroin overdose, but even there, it wasn't enough that he was a good artist and that he had that appeal. He still needed to be, although, the fame did get to him, but he still had the business sense to promote himself, which meant working with other people. So I don't really agree with the mentality or the argument that certain successful people have done it all entirely by themselves. Sometimes you hear this, so everything I've got, I've worked hard for, which is probably true, but it would still have meant you have had to at some point convince other people, whether it be the trainer, whether it be the agent, whether it be the casting scout, whoever it is. Um, and that's a reality of life, and it's why I think we need to have at least a degree of an empathetic personality. I have heard it argued that obnoxious people go further because they're more ruthless. I think that one is out for debate. I mean, this has been used as an example by Gordon Ramsay, the chef, is known for his wicked temper and yelling in people's faces and so on, and people say, oh, well, it works because he's one of the world's top chefs. I'm not 100% convinced by that because there are other successful chefs who don't take that approach. Then you get people who kind of have this facade. Richard Branson is sometimes seen as, oh, well, he's kind of a nice guy, he's a bit eccentric. He seems likable. But beneath that exterior, he's actually quite a ruthless businessman. And as we've seen from recent developments, he's not quite the lefty that, he certainly was made out to be in his younger days. Like Branson's always kind of been portrayed as this left wing, this eccentric left wing entrepreneur. And in some ways he is. Socially, he's probably quite left wing. But then you look at, for example, during coronavirus, the way he treated some of his employees in the furlough wing, things like that. So anyway, I'm going off course here. I think whatever you do in this world, other people come into the equation, whether we like it or not. And I think sometimes that can be very frustrating because sometimes other people put certain expectations or certain barriers in a way that really shouldn't be there. So things that are just like, I find it's the trivial things. It's not the big, profound things. It's the trivial little things that can sometimes just get in the way. Just as an example, I remember the boxing gym I went to. We had bottles like, water bottles just to cool down. And they said that this little kid was going around collecting them at one point. And I was thinking, well, what's the point of that? We still need the bottles. And there was no particular reason given. It was just like, just finish your water bottles now because this kid's collecting them, and it made no sense to me. So sometimes things happen and people make decisions that don't make sense, and sometimes they're just not in a position to do anything about it. That can be pretty frustrating. Um, Sometimes, for example, if you're working for a boss and they make you do something and you're on the front line, i.e., dealing with customers, and they don't like it, and it's beyond your control because it's not your decision, things like that. So, trying to contradict the boss or trying to maybe argue with the boss without being without undermining their authority, because then, of course, you'll be reprimanded or you might even lose your job. So much of life is about balance, trying to get balances with things. The things I've done, I've been a teacher. That's a fairly independent endeavor, at least the sort of teaching I did, it was, and I loved it. I found it very rewarding. And I have to say, I didn't find that anyone was interfering or telling me what to do. But I've had people who've patronized me. I remember one young American woman when I worked out in China. She was 15 years younger than me, and she actually had the more than 15 years, in fact. She actually had the audacity to tell me what to do and to publicly try to put me on the spot and stuff with phones, like we were sorting out phones, and it really bugged me, maybe more than it should have. But anyway, that's the reality of life. Whatever we do, whatever choices we take, yes, you work hard, you'll get stuff, you'll see some merits in that, generally speaking. But I also think we need to be realistic that other people are a factor. And this is what's so often left out in these inspirational videos and, these sound bites that just work hard and you'll get anything, or, do anything. If you put your mind to it, you can do anything you want. Well, no, actually, there are limits in this life. I think accepting that gives us a degree of sanity. That doesn't mean don't be ambitious. I think ambition's a great thing. I'm very ambitious, but I'm also realistic. I know that there are rules. Society has rules. There are certain things that we have to do in a certain way, or that sounds a bit rigid. Other people are a factor, and we cannot overlook it. And suffice to say, if you have a family or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, that also comes into it. I'm single right now, and being single, although it's a bit shit sometimes, it can also be advantageous in giving us a clear focus, just to focus on what we need to do. Let me know your thoughts.